Everybody, welcome back, Know It Alls, for yet another edition of Football on the No Show, but not really the whole show. My partner Jimmy, we're not doing the show right now, but I felt compelled to come on, talk a little bit about the off-season football, some transactions, and what have you. But we'll get right into it. Um, First things first, news that just broke: T. Higgins. We know he's been tagged, but really, it's he wants out of Cincinnati. Like he wants to be traded. He's looking for a new team. Does not want to remain with the Bengals, which honestly doesn't really make much sense. Why you wouldn't want to stay with Cincinnati? You have a quarterback there, a franchise quarterback, a guy that could get you to the next level. But nonetheless, T. Higgins wants out of Cincy, even though he's been tagged by them. So wants a long-term deal. Maybe that's part of it. But we'll see what happens with all that. If he's actually going to get traded, that's a whole other thing. The franchise, as the Bengals, could just be like, nope, we're not trading you. We're going to keep you and hold on to you. And that's that. So we'll see how that battle goes. We know that it's worked out for some players in the past, but it doesn't always work. It's kind of like a rare occasion. So one thing first, too, is we got Russell Wilson on the move. Russell Wilson he's taken visits. He took visits with the Giants, and then ended up in Pittsburgh. And they apparently they spent about 6 hours in that meeting. Russell Wilson, and they must have really had good interest there. And Russell Wilson signs on the dotted line for a 1 year deal, league veteran minimum, only like about $1 million that he's signing for. And that's because the Broncos got to pick up the rest of the tab with his past contract. So huge move there for Pittsburgh. Obviously, Russell Wilson's going to be the starter. Like I know they kept saying about Kenny Pickett this, Kenny Pickett that. They're gonna work with Pickett, but this move definitely uh, clarifies where they're headed. They're ready to move on from Pickett. Russell Wilson's going to be the starter, despite whatever they say in the offseason that it's an open competition. It's just not going to happen. So that's another big piece of news. Uh, One other thing is something big happened at the scouting combine, and that is the 40 record was broken by wide receiver Xavier Worthy from Texas. Ran a 4.21. Now, just to put this in perspective for people that remember Chris Johnson, he ran a 4.22, held the record for many years, and now that record's broke. Super blazing speed. A 4.21 40 is absolutely insane. It's unfathomable to think about when you're not in that realm of speed. Like it is unbelievable how fast that kid ran. So that definitely is going to boost his stock. However, I know a lot of um, so-called experts in the draft are pushing him up into the first round. I'm going to say my personal opinion. I don't think he's a first round talent. I think his speed obviously is unmatched, but when it comes to his play in college, he tends to drop the ball sometimes. He might be blazing fast, but he's super light. Like he doesn't have enough weight. He's like 160 something pounds. Like uh, that's a concern at the next level. If teams that have good corners and do bump and run coverage, they're going to throw him off his routes. They're going to get physical with him. So he's going to be a little bit. I think he's a second day type of pick if you want to take a chance on him. But that's that. Other than that, we have T. Higgins was rumored to be traded. He's now requesting that trade to happen. One thing I do want to say as well is that something very sad happened in the past week. Chris Mortensen of ESPN sadly passed away. Rest in peace, Chris. God bless you and your family. Uh, it's a very sad time. And the other aspect of that too is like growing up watching sports. When I started to really get into football, basketball, hockey, like I watched ESPN all the time, like religiously. And Chris Mortensen was one of those like high profile uh, type of guys that would report the sports. So um, for Chris and his family, condolences. Uh, Now that the scouting combine is come and gone, there's a lot of information coming out as we get closer to the draft. Unfortunately, our real show won't be taking place until probably late March, early April. And at that time, when we bring our show back, we're going to probably dig really deep into the positions of the upcoming draft and how deep each one is. And we'll also put out our ranking system, so that way you guys can get a chance to see what we think about the prospects coming out and how we view the draft, how it's going to shake out. So make sure you tune in beginning of April, so that way we can show you guys, you know, how we view this upcoming draft, because believe me, it's super deep. It's incredible. It's incredible in fluctuation of talent. It's unreal. So we'll dive into that when that time comes. Other than that, some minor news happened. EA Sports, for the video game that everybody's been anticipating for years and years and years, for all you college football fans, is College Football 25 is definitely in the making. It's definitely getting there. The other aspect of it too is that what's interesting is that for the first time in video game history, in football history, the game is going to give back to the players. So all these college football players they have to opt in to the EA Sports organization for this game in order to collect from them. And there was been a big legal battle in terms of the prospects coming out, or prospects that are still playing college football, how much money they were going to get, how much revenue they were going to be able to issue out. So EA Sports kind of reported something along the lines of like 500 per player. Whoever opts in is going to get about $500 per player, and they get a free copy of the video game. It's a pretty sweet deal. I mean, yeah, it's not a ton of money, but you got to think how many thousands of players are going to be involved in this game. So EA Sports, for that to all come together and for them to agree to that, that's pretty amazing. Another piece of news in the NFL that kind of hit pretty big this past week is center Jason Kelce sadly decides to retire. Um, One of the best centers to play the game, hands down, and quite honestly was one of the toughest competitors on the offensive line. Like, guy was absolutely amazing. So for Jason Kelce, now moving on, Philadelphia Eagles got a huge void there at center. So that's going to be hard to fill. Maybe they go free agency. Maybe they go into the draft and say, "Hey, we don't really have many holes. Let's just go and find ourselves a center in the draft." So that's another option for them as well. Jackson Powers Johnson comes to mind right off the top of my head. To me, he's the best center coming out, but I know there's others that are going to kind of rival him a little bit. But that'll be fun to watch for Philly to see what they do with that position group. Uh, and then another big deal, Jerry Jeudy got traded. Jerry Jeudy's been anticipated being traded for a whole season last year. It never happened. But now we get into the offseason. Sean Payton still was looking to move on from him, obviously. And then they still have Cortland Sutton. So that's another name to watch out for. They might be looking to unload completely and start over there in that position group. So Jerry Jeudy moves on to the Cleveland Browns. They get a fifth and a sixth for Jerry Jeudy. Browns got themselves another young, up and coming type of talent in Jerry Jeudy at wide receiver. So uh, bolstering that offensive side of the ball. So that's it for like kind of like the rundown of the news real quick. And I also wanted to kind of go through all the teams right now about like what major moves they've made so far in re-signing players, and maybe guys that are anticipated to go into free agency. So it's a big time of year. Listen, we are, what is it? It's 10:30 right now, close to 10:30. So we got like another hour and a half until the free agency really starts to hit home, and we get into the tampering period where teams are able to negotiate contracts, talk to agents and players, and see if they can get a deal done. It'll only be verbal. It's not anything official. They can't officially sign a contract until free agency opens up in a couple of days after, which will be the 13th on Wednesday, where all these agreed contracts, verbally agreed contracts, can be officially announced and signed and locked in at that time. So that's the real exciting part, is that we are an hour and a half away from the NFL tampering period, where teams and players can definitely agree to a contract, and then they can lock it in on Wednesday when it officially opens up in free agency. So, real quick, we'll start off with the AFC North and Baltimore Ravens. Nelson Aguilar re-signed a one-year extension, so he's going to remain with the team. And then you have the big announcement. A lot of people were expecting Justin Madubuike to end up in free agency. D tackle, one of the best D tackles in the game, still young and in his prime. Agreed to a 4-year deal worth $98 million. 75.5 of that is going to be guaranteed. So a big chunk, over three quarters of that contract is locked in for him. So initially they put a non-exclusive franchise tag on him, and they still ended up getting the deal done. So good on Baltimore for locking him in, because I'll tell you right now, he had a lot of teams that were interested, going to be looking to try to prime away from Baltimore. Cincinnati Bengals. We already heard the T. Higgins news. He's looking to be traded, even though he's been franchise tagged. He wants out of Cincinnati, wants to go to a new team and get a long-term deal done. So T. Higgins will be on the way out. We just don't know where that will be, but we'll stay tuned for that. Cody Ford ended up re-signing a one-year deal to stay with the team, to kind of keep that depth going for their offensive line. Already announced the Browns deal with Jerry Jeudy in the trade. Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers ended up adding a quarterback who they honestly claimed to, we're going to work with Kenny Pickett. We're going to stick with this guy. So, we're going to figure things out. And then boom, Russell Wilson takes a visit to Pittsburgh and everything changes. They signed a one-year deal with Russell Wilson. Why it's just a one-year deal, I'm kind of a little confused, because if you're going to make that decision to move on from Kenny Pickett, why would you just sign a one-year deal with Russell Wilson, when clearly that shows the team and it shows everybody around the league that we're making a change and we want him to be the starter? That's really it. So signs a one-year deal with Pittsburgh. We'll see how that all shakes out. If there's any kind of quarterback controversy, you got to expect that. Going to the AFC South, we got the Houston Texans next. They managed to retain Dalton Schultz for a 3-year deal, $36 million, locking him in and to remain in Houston. And that's a big deal for Houston, because a lot of reports were coming out saying Dalton Schultz was definitely going to test the market, was looking to lock in somewhere else, and Houston was able to retain his services and keep him there. So big deal for Houston, because CJ Stroud, we all know that was one of his favorite targets. And why wouldn't it be, right? They also locked in their kicker, Ka'im Fairbairn. The Indianapolis Colts, Michael Pittman Jr. there receives the non-exclusive franchise tag, which will pay him $21 million, just under $22 million mark. But that doesn't get them out of the woods yet. The Colts still want to retain the services. They still want that long-term deal done. But right now, it doesn't seem like it's going to get done before 12 o'clock hits, when other teams are going to be calling them up saying, hey, Mike, what are you looking for? We want to make you a deal. If a deal does get agreed to by another team with that non-exclusive tag, they can make him an offer, and then it'll be up to the Colts whether they want to match it or let him go. And then depending on the tender, Pittman will go for some draft picks. Colts will get some draft picks out of it anyway. Also, the Colts re-signed linebacker Zaire Franklin. This is another big deal for the Colts. They definitely didn't want to allow him to leave. He signs a 3-year deal, $31 million. That's going to help keep that linebacking core intact. Good deal for the Colts. The Jacksonville Jaguars now are next. They pulled off a trade. for none other than a quarterback in Mac Jones from the New England Patriots. 6th-round pick is the agreed compensation. Mac Jones ends up going to the Jaguars in what seems to be inevitable as a backup quarterback. Uh, Probably not what Mac wanted, obviously. Wants to compete for the starting job, but let's be honest, Jacksonville Jaguars, they have Trevor Lawrence. They've definitely view him as the franchise quarterback and um, their go-to guy. So Mac Jones, it sucks to be him right now. You're locked in as that backup, and this might be his new situation where if he's not able to prove that New England was a fluke for a couple years, or that it's because of the revolving door of offensive coordinators and offenses that he had to learn, that he could maybe potentially prove that he's a starting caliber quarterback in preseason. That's probably his best bet because now that he is deemed the backup to Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville, that the only way he can really prove that he has starting capabilities is now in preseason. So when the Jaguars play their games, and he's going to be out there a lot, maybe he can show something to other teams that might be interested in trading for him to go for their starting job. So that'll be a whole interesting situation to say the least. Other than that, the Jaguars did also lock up Ezra Cleveland, the guard, 3-year deal, $28 million. That's good for them, locking up a veteran, really proven guard who can lock up. And they did the same kind of thing, but they went to the free agency market. Mitch Morse actually become expendable by the Bills, ends up being a free agent center out there, and the Jaguars pounced on it. They did not wait. They ended up locking him in for a 2-year deal, $10 million, and it's a really good signing. They lock into both those positions. They re-sign Ezra. They go out and they get a veteran in Mitch Morse. That kind of shores up their offensive line in the interior. Good for them. The other big concern for the Jaguars right now is Josh Allen, their pass rusher. I know that they've been talking and talking and talking about a new contract, trying to get that deal done before 12 o'clock today when the other teams are going to be able to start negotiating with them. So they got a little bit of time, and who knows, maybe that piece of news is going to come in a half hour or so. Maybe they can agree to a deal. But as of right now, as it stands, Josh Allen is looking to test free agency. They did put the non-exclusive franchise tag on him, so teams will still be able to negotiate a contract with him. But if there is an agreement in place and the Jaguars do not want to match it, then Jaguars will receive a couple of picks and Josh Allen will be on his way elsewhere. We'll get into the AFC West because honestly, Tennessee Titans haven't done anything in this offseason as of yet. The Broncos signed their safety PJ Locke, who apparently they are absolutely in love with. They think this kid could develop into a starting safety, and most likely with the transition of Justin Simmons being moved on from, they release him. PJ Locke, it opens up a door where he could possibly start this year. Kansas City Chiefs. A lot of people expected Chris Jones to be testing free agency. When you look at the Chiefs' cap space, really wasn't much there. Like it was probably like $3 million under the cap when they moved some contracts around, and now they went big. Chris Jones signs a mega deal. I mean, absolutely insane. I think this is kind of almost too much money. 5 years, $158 million, $100 million in guarantees. Like that is absolutely insane to think about. Now his contract is going to come right above Aaron Donald as a D tackle. He'll be the highest paid D tackle in history. It's insane what the Chiefs were able to do there with that contract. And at the same time this week, they also went out and they re-signed linebacker Drew Tranquill, who came in on a 1-year deal last year, played phenomenally well, and he ends up blocking a 3-year, $19 million deal as well. So 2 big-time players there for them that they're able to retain. But what does this do for the cap space? I mean, it blows everything back up. So now they are back over the cap. I don't know what they're going to do until 12 o'clock today, if they want to try to get involved in any of these other free agent signings, but they're going to have to reduce that cap number pretty quickly. They have until Wednesday is the official beginning of the season. So they have until Wednesday to get back under that cap number. But also another big piece of their news is that they tagged L'Jarius Sneed. L'Jarius Sneed is also tagged, and they're looking to possibly trade him because they don't want to give up $20 million to L'Jarius Sneed. They've already paid Chris Jones and Drew Tranquill a lump sum of money. They're going to need to reduce that cap number. I think Sneed is definitely going to be on the move. I think whether it's tampering opening up, but there's been teams that have already called about the services of L'Jarius Sneed in a trade. Minnesota Vikings are one team to watch. I know that they've called the Chiefs about possibly trading for L'Jarius Sneed, and we all know that Sneed wants a long-term deal and he's looking for a big payday. So we'll see what happens with L'Jarius as we go further. The Raiders, they re-sign Andre James, their starting center from the last couple of years, returns and is going to remain that for 3 more. NFC East, not a whole lot has happened in the NFC East. Yet the Cowboys haven't done anything due to they don't have the most cap space. The Giants have cap space, but it seems like they're going to be very selective on how much they spend and who they spend it on. We know that Saquon Barkley is out there. He's going to be testing free agency. And mind you, the running backs in free agency are extremely deep. I don't think I can ever remember a time watching the NFL and seeing this many high caliber running backs that are available in free agency. They're all testing the market. You know, DeAndre Swift, Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs, Derrick Henry, um, Austin Eckler. Like, there are a lot of talented running backs. Yeah, some of them are a little older. They're either 30 years old or approaching 30 or however, and usually teams want to shy away from that, but they're very talented. They all can still ball. It's worth kind of like getting a feel for what they're looking at a contract, maybe bringing them in as a little bit of a cheaper option if you can. But that's the other thing I'll say too about free agency is like a lot of these players, especially at the running back position, it is devalued. You are no longer going to get 15 million a year. That's not happening. And I hope that their agents are with the same thinking that, yeah, we're going to try to get maybe 10 million a year, depending on how teams value you. And that's going to be interesting to see. So um, we'll see how that all translates in when the market opens at 12 o'clock today. Uh, Other than that, we get back on here with the Eagles. The Eagles, they retained the services of Brandon Graham. Good for them. They got a 1-year deal done. Other than that, you have the Commanders actually with a surprising signing right away with tight end Zach Ertz. You know, former Super Bowl winner, former big time Pro Bowl tight end for the Eagles, signed a 1-year deal worth $5 million for Washington. So I mean, they added some talent there, but it's not the end. They got a lot of holes to fill. Chicago Bears. They managed to retain the services of Jalen Johnson, who was probably the number one free agent option for a lot of teams that were going to go after him. They lock him up for a 4-year deal, staying in Chicago at $76 million. They also, with a recent signing as of yesterday, signed safety Kevin Byard, getting a 2-year deal done with them for $15 million. Locking up that safety position. We know that the Bears moved on from Eddie Jackson, so here comes Kevin Byard, who recently got released, is now a Chicago Bear. Ryan Bates, offensive tackle, was acquired from the Bills in a trade to kind of help bolster that offensive line, give up a 5th-round pick, and we'll see how that all works out for Chicago. Chicago making some moves, getting some things done to get ready for this free agent period. Remember, 12 o'clock today, that's when legal tampering begins, where everybody that's due to be a free agent or is looking to test the market can freely and openly discuss contracts, maybe even agree to some deals. That's definitely going to happen because we see it every single year. Guys agree to deals early before the NFL season actually starts officially. So it'll be interesting to see where some of these free agents end up. And we know that there's going to be a lot of movement. So stay tuned. A lot of news is already happening. My phone's blowing up with notifications. I can't even check them right now. But A lot of movement going to be happening. The Lions, they go ahead and they sign a 3-year deal with Graham Glasgow, the guard, starting caliber guard, $20 million, helping further shore up that offensive line. Manuel Mosley re-signed a free agent deal, probably for 1 year, the corner there, so he's going to stay. Same thing with Jalen Reeves-Maybin. They're one of their key starting linebackers. They keep him on a 2-year deal. Going into the NFC South, we have the Carolina Panthers, which is an interesting thing with Brian Burns. We heard last year that Brian Burns wanted to trade, wanted to get out of Carolina. He received a non-exclusive franchise tag, so teams will still be able to deal with him at 12 o'clock. And if a deal is agreed to, obviously he'll be on the move, and Panthers get a couple picks. But that's something right there where Carolina wants to keep Brian Burns. They're still trying to work out a deal before the free agency tampering opens up at 12. But they also managed to retain the services of Troy Hill, the corner. Resigns for a 1-year deal, and that's a good signing right there. That guy right there, he's a good player. He's solid. He's a good nickel corner, and the Panthers are going to be able to keep him. The Saints. The only bit of news that the Saints have right now is because their salary is absolutely out of this world. They have till Wednesday to get back into NFL compliance with their cap space. They are way over the cap right now still. They've done a tremendous job of reducing that number. They started off at 80 million over the cap. Now they are close to around 20 or 30 million over the cap. So they've made tremendous strides in that area. But they re-signed safety Tyrann Mathieu, keeping him in New Orleans on a 2-year deal. Didn't even break the bank. They did a tremendous job constructing this contract. It's worth 13 million. So keep him on a cheap deal, a team-friendly deal, and they managed to retain his services. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, biggest news as of the last 2 days is Baker Mayfield has now re-signed with Tampa Bay, signing a 3-year, $100 million deal. This is huge for Tampa because, let's face it, there was question marks when Tom Brady left. What were they going to do with that position? Baker Mayfield comes in and helps them get into the playoffs, win the division. You definitely need to reward a player like that. So Baker Mayfield did his thing. Definitely a starting caliber quarterback for any team, and that's what Tampa Bay was worried about, is him leaving, because they didn't have an answer. So locking him up for 3-year deals. They also lock up Mike Evans, giving him a 2-year deal, $52 million, and they put the non-exclusive franchise tag on Antoine Winfield Jr. So locking up 3 key players for this team. We'll have to wait and see what happens with Winfield Jr. We know that they're trying to work out a long-term deal for him, but those are 3 key players that Tampa Bay looks like they're going to hold on to for the upcoming season. Going into the NFC West, the Rams retain the services of Demarcus Robinson, wide receiver, and guard Kevin Dotson. Now, that was a big signing. Kevin Dotson, still young in his prime, 27 years old. Lock him up for a 3-year deal. And that's big for the Rams that need to keep building this offensive lineup to keep Stafford standing upwards. Niners retain the services of offensive tackle Colton McKivitz. Signed him to a 1-year deal. Very cheap deal for $7 million. So he'll remain there for 1 extra season. And then other than that, that's it for like all the signings and everything. I know we have a lot going on as we approach just over an hour is what we have until 12 o'clock, where teams are going to be able to talk football. They're going to talk contracts and what have you. And John, I'm just seeing this. John Felton tuning into the show. Thanks, John. He goes, I don't want any Kirk news. Well, John, you're most likely going to get Kirk news. The thing with Kirk Cousins is what's interesting is that how the developments have happened. Is before it was like, well, Minnesota, do they want Kirk back? And then it was, does Kirk want to even come back? And there was this whole debate on if he was going to test free agency or not, and if Minnesota was going to be able to lock him up. But what it sounds like right now, as we get closer and closer to the tampering period where teams can sign free agents, it sounds like Kirk Cousins is going to test free agency. It sounds like Kirk Cousins is going to test, and there are a team by the name of the Atlanta Falcons that are aggressively going to go after Kirk Cousins and try to get him signed. Seems like they've already made the decision that they really want Kirk Cousins and they're going to do what it takes to try to get him. So it'll be interesting to see, one, if Kirk does end up leaving, and two, what the contract's going to look like, because we know Kirk Cousins, his agent and Kirk Cousins, they've done a tremendous job of making that man really rich. Uh, I don't know how they've done it, but they've done it with Washington when he was there, made buku dollars there, then goes to Minnesota making 30 million large every year. Like, I'm curious. I mean, being an older quarterback now in his 30s and also coming back from an ACL injury, I wonder how teams are going to view that and how they're going to go about trying to get him signed. So that's one other thing, John, that you can expect right there. I'm going to try to see if I can see any news here. Let's see. Jets re-signed Greg Zuerlein, it looks like, to a 2-year deal. And Rayshawn Jenkins, who was recently cut by the Jaguars, is taking a visit with the Niners as of right now. So if there's no more questions, I think that's going to be it for right now. We got just over an hour until the NFL free agency tampering period begins. Good luck to all you teams out there looking to improve your teams, looking to try to get your team over the hump, whatever the case may be. We know that it's going to be extremely active, and it already has been. We've had trades already leading up to this point. We've had people getting cut, and this happens every year. There's going to be even more cuts. There's going to be veteran cuts that happen where teams are going to try to get under compliance with the salary cap. And by doing so, they're going to have to cut people. Look at the Chargers, for example. Chargers got a tough decision to make. We know that the Chargers are looking to possibly trade, definitely going to try to trade Khalil Mack or Joey Bosa or Keenan Allen. Those are three big names of their franchise that are all getting older. Bosa, his issue is injuries, and they're kind of tired of dealing with it. So it looks like they're ready to move on from him. But what's interesting is that they only need to cut one. If they were to cut one, they'll be under the salary cap, just under, not by a lot, but just under. So it'll be interesting to see how teams, if they hold off, because all teams, they're not dumb. All teams know that when a team is stuck in this position where they're going to have to make a cut, most likely they're going to get released. No team will trade for that player unless they view it as a necessity where they need to go out, trade for him, give up a low pick to obtain the services, but also they don't have to compete with nobody that way. But usually that's a rare thing. Teams will tend to hold out, allow them to cut the player, and then they'll try to go after him in free agency. So Chargers are stuck in an interesting place. The Chiefs, I'm wondering how they're going to get back under cap space, most likely restructuring a contract with Patrick Mahomes and maybe Travis Kelce. That's what I look forward to happen there. There's a couple other salary strapped teams. Trying to think. Chargers are another one. Niners have a little bit. They're definitely going to be just fine. They're going to get under the cap space, no problem. Other than that, that's about it. We covered a lot. Went over all the teams of what they've done so far up to this point. I'm going to take a quick look one more time to see if there's any last second news breaking that we can kind of talk about right now. We talked about Rayshawn Jenkins, Russell Wilson's to Pittsburgh. Oh, Tre'Davious White got cut by the Bills too. I forgot to mention that. That was another big deal to cut salary. The Bills are also still over the cap as well, so you're going to see them make a lot of moves too. Bills are also reworking the deal for Dawson Knox. creating 14 million in cap space. So the Bills are starting to get back under the salary cap as they're making moves. And it's confirmed that Kirk Cousins is definitely testing free agency. So he'll be out there. Maybe the Atlanta Falcons will be one of those teams that are going to go full court press on him and try to lock him up as their future quarterback. But we'll just wait and see. It's exciting. It's the time of year where every team can get better. I mean, we got free agency coming up, and make sure you tune in when our show comes back. The end of March is when we're going to really kind of dive into the draft, and we're going to talk about prospects, and we're going to do our own little scouting rankings and what have you. So make sure you tune in then. End of March, beginning of April, we'll be back. I just wanted to pop on the live and talk a little football because I'm kind of getting the itch again. And thanks everybody who's tuned in. Appreciate the comment, John. And everybody have a great day. Make sure you keep watch on your teams today. 12 o'clock is when the free agency really opens up. That's the tampering period where you can sign free agents. It's going to be pretty cool. It's going to be pretty cool. There's always a lot of players that move around, so make sure you tune in. And do me a favor, if you could do so, help our show grow by heading over to YouTube, Football on the No Show. That's where it's at. Go to our channel, subscribe, like, share, do all that good stuff. And as well, you can follow us anywhere you get your podcasts. Make sure you do so. Drop the follow. Take us with you on the go and be in the know, because that's what this is all about. We're trying to grow this football community. And thanks to you guys and all the supporters, we've been able to keep growing every single year. So really appreciate everything, and enjoy free agency tampering period. It's going to be a good one. Watch for a lot of big names going to get signed elsewhere, and possibly still more trades to come with T. Higgins and what have you. So tune in. 12 o'clock is when it all starts. Make sure you pay attention. It's going to be awesome. I'll probably do another live maybe after the initial wave that's kind of going to transpire here and go over like some of the big news that's happened. But thanks guys for everything. Tune in. Like I said, next time we're going to have our real show. It'll be end of March, beginning of April. Football Another Show. See you there Wednesday nights, 8:30 p.m. We'll see you then. All right, guys. Peace. Have a good one.